In part 1 we saw how the career of Herbert Lange developed from working for the Gestapo in Stettin, Aachen and Poznań into being the first to use gas chambers to murder the mentally and physically challenged, and then to the use of gas fans to murder those in care homes. In the summer of 1940, Herbert Lange came here to Działdowo. This town was outside of the Warthegau and was in former Polish territory now annexed to East Prussia. At a meeting in Poznań, the higher SS and police leader Wilhelm Koppe mentioned to his counterpart from Koenigsburg, Wilhelm Rediess, about what Sonderkommando Lange was doing, and it would seem that he offered to loan it to him. Himmler agreed, and Ernst, Danzog and Otto Rasch sorted everything else out. The deal involved Rediess paying 10 Reichsmarks per victim, and Lange was due to get 2,000 Reichsmarks to cover his expenses from Rasch. As it happened, Rediess failed to pay. Koppe was so annoyed that he tried to get Himmler involved. The town had reverted to its former name of Soldau. The concentration camp at Soldau had initially been set up by Otto Rasch, first of all for Polish prisoners of war, and then for potential opponents of the new regime. The Nazis transferred at least 1,600 of what they considered to be the incurably sick here from all over East Prussia to be murdered by Lange. Including local Polish people, Lange killed 1,808 people here in Soldau. At the time, the population of East Prussia was around 2.4 million people. There were around 6,100 people who were institutionalized in state and religious care homes. The medical records of many of the victims from East Prussia have survived. For some reason I cannot explain, the East German authorities kept these records secret, but since the reunification of Germany they are now available. Those records had been seized by T4 authorities in Berlin after complaints had been made by nursing homes in East Prussia. Thanks to these records, we can now trace the fate of the victims from East Prussia. Henryk Malichak, one of the Sonderkommando prisoners brought from Fort 7 in Poznań, stated that one day Erich Koch, Gauleiter of East Prussia, turned up in person to examine the graves. Koppe might not have got paid, but for Lange it was a job well done. Koch presented him with an amber box in appreciation, and Himmler allowed him and his men to take a holiday. One source says that they went to the Netherlands, which had just been occupied, no doubt an opportunity to do some shopping, to purchase some of the luxuries that had been missing in Germany since the National Socialists took over. For Lange's Polish Sonderkommando, the slaves who had to dig the graves, it was to be no holiday. They were returned to Fort 7 in Poznań. 1 year later, Lange in person sought them out and was disappointed with the starving weaklings he found. He ordered that they be given extra food in order to fatten them up. They would be needing all their strength for the next job he had planned for them. This is Iłowo Osada in northern Poland. I would say it's one of the most interesting villages I've ever visited, although the themes I explored there were related to my particular interests. This was a border crossing in the 19th century from the Russian Empire to the Second German Reich. As the anti-Semitism of Russia forced hundreds of thousands of Jews to flee the country, many passed through the border point here. This is the railway station at Iłowo Osada in Poland. It may not look like much today. The railway station itself has no personnel. If you want to buy a ticket, then you're going to have to do it on the train, or if there's a machine here. But the station has been unmanned now for a number of years. But would you believe that this railway station in a small town today, the population about 2,800, something like this, but when this railway station was initially built, the population was no more than 500, and this became a major starting point for many people for life in the New World. Around 500,000 people passed through here, leaving Russia and on their way to America. This station was the first point in what was then Germany, in Prussia. The Russian border in Poland was a couple of kilometers down the line, so this is where people came to. And because of the amount of emigrants passing through, the station itself, actually this dates largely to what we see now to 1895. The railway line's been here since 1877. And there were 5 crossing places for emigrants from Russia into Germany and 7 from Russia into Austria. Now, people passing through here in 1904, the German government decreed that emigrants in transit had to only use German ports, so that's to say Bremen or Hamburg. Those that were going to, say, Antwerp or Rotterdam had to pass through Austria in a very roundabout way. So you go from Austria, then you go into Switzerland, then into France, and that would be a rather expensive option because of that, because of the price and everything. This made things very difficult for new emigrants to the United States above all, but also to other countries such as Argentina. There were frontier battles here during World War I. Later, after the town was captured by Nazi Germany on the 2nd of September 1939, a sub-camp of the Soldau concentration camp was built here. The main building still survives, as you can see here. Only 2 kilometers from here, on the 4th to the 10th of July 2022, a team under Dr. Andrzej Ossowski uncovered 17 tons of human ashes in the Białowieżski forest. This means with certainty that at least 8,000 people were murdered here and their bodies destroyed at this location by Sonderkommando 1005 as from the 1st of March 1944. This shows how successful the Nazis could be in destroying the evidence of their crimes. The victims in the Białowieżski forest may not have been from Sonderkommando Lange. That we do not know. Not everyone who was to be sent to Soldau to be killed was, however, killed. Sometimes there were very lucky escapes. I came across the story of Anna S. from Allenstein in East Prussia, today Olsztyn in Poland. Anna was born in 1906 and she found herself in the psychiatric hospital in Koszów, located some 2 kilometers from the centre of Allenstein. Koszów is today Kotowo in Poland. She was selected for the first transport to Soldau for those to be killed by Lange, but for some reason, either by mistake or deliberate error, she was transferred to the Catholic facility St. Andreasburg near Braunsburg, today Braniewo. Nonetheless, this did not save her. From there she was put on a transport list of the 8th and 9th of July 1940 with 178 other patients to the killing centre at Pirna Sonnenstein. But for unknown reasons, once more she missed the death transport. In August 1941, Hitler officially cancelled the T4 murder programme. However, it still continued in secret. On the 31st of March 1943, Anna was transferred to Hadamar in Hesse. On the 9th of July 1943, records show that she died of heart failure, suggesting that she was murdered. The hospital in Koszów still stands today, and this is what it looks like. Between the 21st and 31st of May 1940, 301 patients from this hospital were sent to Soldau to be murdered by Sonderkommando Lange. The victims were selected by the doctors at the clinic, depending on whether they considered a cure to be possible. Patients who had already been accommodated for more than 5 years were considered incurable. However, as many had relatives, this led to questions as to the fate of the victims. The president of the Koenigsburg Higher Regional Court, Max Dreger, instructed other government bodies to refrain from making further inquiries. The official declarations of death were made in the course of 1941 by a special Nazi registry office, whereby the date of death, place of death and cause of death were falsified to reasons such as weak heart, infectious disease and others. As the body was never returned, having been cremated, more questions were asked. After the Allenburg Provincial Hospital and Nursing Home near Koenigsburg was closed, its patients were transferred to Kottau on the 8th of June 1940. Kottau served as a hub for transporting East Prussian patients to the killing centres. In July 1941, at least 474 inmates were transported several times, 78 of them directly to the Pirna Sonnenstein killing centre. The rest were subsequently murdered in accordance with the existing killing capacity. Further transports took place in August 1941 when 196 patients were sent to their deaths, and February 1942 involving 348 patients. After this, patients were murdered individually. From 1941 until the end of the war, Kottau served as a hospital for Wehrmacht soldiers and prisoners of war. The military hospital had a capacity of 1,350 beds, while the psychiatric hospital was reduced to 520 beds. We know that at least 5,000 German soldiers from World War I with post-traumatic stress disorder were murdered in the T4 campaign. How many from World War II has never been established. If you're interested in knowing more of the murders of wounded German soldiers on the Eastern Front by the National Socialist regime, there's a link below for a video I did on the Osteinsatz. The end of the war brought no relief for the patients at Kottau. On the 19th or 20th of January 1945, 500 patients were evacuated by train. How far the train got is not known. There's no record that I know of that it arrived anywhere. On the night of the 21st to the 22nd of January 1945, Soviet troops of the 3rd Guard Cavalry Corps under the command of Nikolai Oslikovsky captured Allenstein practically without a fight. In Kottau, all remaining patients, medical staff and refugees present were killed by Red Army soldiers. Some buildings with the patients still in them were locked and set on fire. The clinic director and his wife were found shot, and several doctors were found hanging in the attic of a residential building, which is today Aleja Warszawska 107. Once Lange got back from his holiday in the Netherlands, it seems he returned to his desk at the Poznań Gestapo. He was to stay there until he returned to killing patients in care homes in the early summer of 1941. He revisited some of the locations where he'd been in 1940, but also new ones such as the hospital in the Łódź ghetto and other hospitals in Łódź, Bojanowo near Leszno, and a retirement home in Stawicin. There were also more victims from Germany. One group was collected from Frankfurt on Oder and buried near Nowy Tomaszl, and another group of around 500 corpses was buried in Menzichot from an unknown location. However, his murder activities were now to take him further afield, with his next job being in occupied Russia, as we shall see in part 3.